When determining if you have a hot water heating element malfunction, the first thing you gotta do is locate where your heating element's at. Mine happens to be behind this little cover right here. Then you wanna turn off your electrical to the rig, or at least throw the breaker to the hot water heater itself so you don't get a shock. Now once you do that, you're gonna need a couple tools. In my case, I needed a Phillips screwdriver, and I needed in my back pocket here, I need a flat tip for mine. And you're also gonna have to have a multimeter to determine if your heating element itself is actually good. Now you can do this with it installed, just make sure all that power is turned off to the heating element. Then you want to proceed to remove the cover, access the heating element itself. Make sure you keep hold of all your hardware. And there should be a little gasket behind there. Just make sure you don't tear, and if you do, you can either make a gasket, order one, or you can even use a little bit of automotive glue to actually silicone to replace that gasket, because you do want it waterproof. Now, as you can see right here is my heating element. To test the heating element, all you want to do, take your multimeter. For power, to see if there's power getting to the heating element, you want to be putting it on AC voltage. And every little multimeter is different. This just happens to be a mid-tier, not so cheap, not so expensive one. Once you have access to your heating element, you want to determine if the element is actually receiving power to heat it up before you remove it or test to see if it's faulty. Now you're going to turn the power back on in the rig, then turn the heating element on, turn your hot water heater electrical side on, test the white lead, which is power, to your negative lead, and you should be seeing somewhere around 120 volts, give or take. I'm reading 106 volts, 0.4. That's well within my limitations for my 110 volt power going to a heating element. So now I determined that I have power to my heating element. Now I have to determine if the heating element itself is good. I'm gonna turn the power back off to the hot water heater in the rig, and then I'll test continuity or ohms of resistance to my heating element. Now I've thrown the breaker to my hot water heater and I've turned the hot water heater off. I should be able to test again for voltage at the white lead to the heating element and the negative, and I show no voltage. Now I know I safely have no power going to this hot water heater. Now I can test the heating element for resistance. For my particular one, and the way you test that is you'll take your voltage times itself, which I know is 110, and then divide that by the watts of the heating element. My heating element is 1400 watts divided by 120 times 120, that's going to give me approximately 10 ohms resistance. So now you reset your multimeter, and that's going to be your ohms of resistance. Mine's in auto. And I can now test the same two screws, and I should have somewhere between 8 to 10, 10 to 12, plus or minus 2. I'm getting 10.2 ohms of resistance. That tells me that my heating element is good. I have no fault at my heating element. I know I'm getting power to my heating element. So now I will test my switching mechanism to my heating element. Now that I've determined that my heating element is actually good, power's going to it, has the correct resistance. Now I'm going to check that the relay, which is this little box right here, which has a 12 volt power coming in, a ground coming in, a ground going to the chassis, and a ground going to my heating element. Now theoretically, I've already determined that the ground going to my heating element is correct, because when I checked the resistance and the power at the heating element, everything was good. So I'll simply disconnect my 12 volts, switch my multimeter to DC, connect my multimeter to my 12 volts, go to my ground, and I should be picking up 12 volts, which I'm picking up 11.94. Okay, at this point I should clarify that a relay is nothing more than a switch. The 12 volts going to the relay acts as a energizer to connect the 120 volts going to the relay, and then out the left side terminal there going to the heating element. By doing this, I verified that I had powered 12 volts to the relay, and then I checked the 120 or the black lead in the previous photo to the heating element, and I had no power going to the heating element. That tells me that the relay itself is not switching over when energized by the 12 volts. Now that tells me that the relay internally is bad. So now you want to replace the relay. That's the first step I'll take to correct my water heater electrical heating side. Once you've determined what the most plausible cause is, or probable cause is, then you want to order your part, and I have. Mine is actually a Dometic. Be careful with ordering, because there's a difference between a manufacturer's part number and an order number. So once I've turned all my power off again, I'm going to compare these two relays. Make sure that they're both 832AW-1A-C1, which they are. And now if you're not sure about wiring, take a picture of it, or do like I've done. I've actually unbolted my relay from the panel, and I'm literally going to position it in the same position, and I'm going to one by one remove my wires and install them on the new relay. Starting with my ground. Make sure they line up. Remove ground from the old to the new. And I'm going to drop down my permanent ground coming from inside the rig. Replace it. Then I'm going to go to my 12 volt power source. Replace it. And my chassis ground, which is the green wire, and replace it. Now I'm 100% sure that my new relay is wired in the same fashion as my original relay. Then, before I actually install mine back to the rig, I'm going to turn all my power back on, turn on the heating element, and ensure that it works. Now, through the marvel of modern technology, I've hooked everything back up. I've let it sit for about 2 hours, and I verified that now my internal heating element is functioning properly, and it was a bad relay. These few steps that I've just taken will help you determine what parts to buy without spending too excess money or calling that rep out there if you feel comfortable doing this, because you are working with electricity. So just be aware of that. Now I'm simply going to reinstall my relay, and knock on wood, job well done. Now, once I've got my relay back installed, I didn't damage my gasket too much. It was basically a double-sided 3M product. I can put my housing back on, close everything up, good to go. Just make sure all your wires are clear and you're not pinching any of your wires, which, as you can see, can be a little tedious. Now everything's tight, water sealed, all my wires are out of the way. I verified that it works. Everything's good to go. I did a short on verifying how a thermal fuse is blown in the event that your propane side of the hot water heater is not working. Check it out.